I'm here with my buddy CoolCheese, who is perhaps the best SMG player in all of Destiny. I think some people would agree with that. And we're going to talk all about getting good with SMGs in PvP in all the different modes, including trials, quick play, and pretty much every question you could possibly imagine about SMGs. So it should be a lot of fun. So I think the first place to start is just the overall picture of where SMGs fit in the current meta. So that's like their strengths and weaknesses, kind of like what weapons are good matchups against, what maps make sense, what times they maybe don't make the most sense. What is your overall feeling on where SMGs fit currently in the meta, and like when, I know you like to use them pretty much always, but for the general player, are there times that you think that they make more sense than others?
I guess to start, what I would describe SMGs as is they're kind of the entry frag primary and kind of the core of an entry frag build in the current meta. Me and a couple of my friends have been playing a lot of scrims around them, and we've definitely noticed a very significant improvement in our performance if we had one person on an SMG. I don't really think they outperform hand cannons consistently. It's very hard to outperform them with hand cannon aim assist as well as burst DPS, but having one SMG user on your team is very valuable from anything from trials to sixes to like scrims, whatever. They're very strong in the current state. I think on most maps they do work, assuming you are using a SMG build. However, on those longer range maps, I think there becomes more and more of a reason to run a hand cannon if you are a more aggressive player.
First of all, for people who maybe don't know that terminology, entry fragger is coming from tactical games like Counter-Strike, Valorant and stuff, and basically it just means that it's the person going in first, typically trying to get like an opening kill, opening pick. So I'm curious, in your perspective, what makes SMGs good for that in Destiny?
I think SMGs are great because, similar to hand cannons, they have a very high base accuracy. Sidearms have it too, but they have a little bit of consistency issues. But SMGs as a whole, they have that in-air accuracy, they have the lack of accuracy penalty when coming out of a sprint, and simultaneously having a fast TTK similar to those of ARs and pulses. ARs and pulses time to kill is not quite, it's really not that different than an SMG. But since SMGs have that, what I like to call hand cannon accuracy ability, it just makes them so strong. They essentially are hand cannons, but different and smaller, and they kill super fast. That's why they're good, I would say, as opposed to something like an AR.
Fair enough. So one thing that obviously any automatic weapon in Destiny struggles with a little bit is lack of being able to peek shoot, which is basically when you're using cover to peek in and out to deal all of your damage in a burst as opposed to like a continuous stream. That's something that I think that particularly hurts like auto rifles in like mid-range, but SMGs are such an aggressive weapon that you're not really trying to fight those like longer peak battles anyway. Is that something that concerns you when you're using them, or it's just not really a big thing? Because I know you're a very aggressive player.
I think when I'm playing Stasis, Stasis is really kind of the key that allowed SMGs to seep into the meta in the way they have recently. But even when I'm running Stasis, the peak shotting is very hard to play against people, like good players, essentially, is what it comes down to. Like, it's very hard to use an SMG against a hand cannon player who knows how to use a hand cannon. Because in a situation where you get first shot on a hand cannon before the SMG starts your spray, you have a faster TTK. And so for me personally, in most lobbies, it doesn't matter because I can consistently rely on most of my opponents missing. But if I'm going against a good player who has a great primary shot, who understands the strength of a hand cannon, it is very hard, if not impossible, to beat those disciplined players within their effective range. Sure, there might be things I can use with my abilities, but oftentimes I really don't want to burn any of my util or grenades melee to beat a primary duel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about like what you're looking for in an SMG. I know your multi-mock is your baby and you've put a lot of kills on that thing. Can you talk a little bit about what you're looking for in an SMG? Because I know you're good with quite a few of them. Are you looking for, just max range? Obviously the zoom factor can make a pretty big difference in its effective range. Like, what are you looking for?
So first and foremost, the zoom factor is the most important part on a gun. I think that if you have below a 15 zoom SMG, you are a masochist if you are bringing that into PvP. Not a good idea. Do not recommend. Secondly, range stat is also very important. Not quite as important as zoom, but it definitely... I guess, to rephrase, the range stat is super important because it multiplies on that zoom stat. And so having a high range stat with a high zoom allows you to really push into that 25 plus meters, which is very strong and kind of allows you to put most hand cannon users in a very, very paranoid state. They kind of panic, which is very good, and that's why these more recent SMGs have been so good. Finally, when it comes to perk selection, anything that further increases that range or anything that gives you damage is really good. A very hot perk that people like is Kill Clip. However, in general, I would say I prefer perks like Iron Reach on the Multimach. It makes a lightweight SMG competitive with the 750 and 600 archetypes, as well as something like Killing Wind is a godsend. And Killing Wind I prefer over Kill Clip a lot of the time anyway, just because having that increased accuracy as well as range really, it just makes it super consistent at those farther ranges, even if you're not necessarily killing them any faster per se. And I value that a lot more.
Yeah, it's interesting on SMGs because they already are, generally speaking, more lethal than like a hand cannon in a pure like time to kill perspective, especially if you start mixing in like some body shots and headshots together. But I feel like the shotgun changes recently have really made a lot of extra room for SMGs, because it used to be that, you know, if you could get a kill with like, let's say like a 9-meter dust rock or something, and like SMGs are, especially some of the worst ones over time, like didn't really have the greatest range. So maybe your gap of like the maximum one-hit kill from a dust rock to like some of the better SMGs at the time were probably maybe, let's say, 20-ish meters. Like there's just not a huge gap where you're able to kill them before they can close the gap on you. But now slug shotguns have become a lot more popular, so that does cause some issues for SMGs because they can still get within, you know, chaperone range pretty quickly. But for pellet shotguns, I feel like there's just such a bigger gap now than there used to be with all the recent changes to how pellet shotguns are performing.
Yeah, that's definitely true, but I think with respects to the like elite SMG players, the main ones I think of are Nomthray, Lunars, and I'm getting to their level. I'm not quite there myself, but I don't, for at least I can say personally, I never really had a super big problem with pellet shotguns before the nerf. Having a build that reflects the strengths of an SMG allows them to excel in a way that unless the special weapon is going past, like, let's say 10 meters, it's really not going to do much. And that's with things like Peacekeepers allowing you to strafe super fast, or things like Stasis, which allow you to create space, even if you're not actually killing them with the Stasis crystals, but just creating a wall. They're not going to push it because they're scared that you actually are going to kill them with the ability. And then you also get some DR and stuff. And so I think for like a more average player base, the shotgun changes have made SMGs a lot more accessible, but I think within the higher end of play that it really doesn't really change things. If not, it's harder now that slug shotguns are the go-to. It's much harder to duel a chaperone than Fellwinter's ever was. For example, like if there's a chaperone user that won't miss, you can't kill them fast enough within your SMG effective range before they headshot you. Like you just can't. And so that is very frustrating, and it always has been. But now everyone, their child, their pet frog, everyone has a chaperone on. And so, at least with respect to playing against the top 1%, I think it's actually gotten worse. It's harder to use SMGs now.
Yeah.
Post shotgun nerfs.
That's really interesting. So as far as the different subclasses go, which ones do you think, I guess let's talk about classes and subclasses. Which ones do you think synergize the best with SMG, and which ones are maybe not so the strongest options to pair with a more aggressive SMG player?
I think that if we're talking about what is optimal, you should be playing Titan because of Peacekeepers. There are some other good options on the other classes as well, but starting with Titans, because of Peacekeepers, are kind of the SMG class. Behemoth is, I think, the best Titan subclass in the game, period. But in addition to how the class works, it is extremely strong with SMG play. The ability to have multiple ways to create instant cover, to create space, as well as super fast movement tech, makes this class a no-brainer for me. You move so fast, whether it's things like Cryoclasm, that you can just slide peek a lane and you move so fast that they can't even react. Or if it's something like a Glacier Grenade, like let's say someone's on that gold box over there, and I'm peeking this, I see them, I can throw a Glacier on there, they can't peek me, I go up to the Glacier, I have DR and they're in SMG range. There's not much they can do about it. And then I break my ice, now I'm getting my Glacier back faster. If they push me with their chaperone, I melee back, and then SMG again. And I don't think any class has that level of synergy that Behemoth does. Just crazy. But other top options, I think Bottom Tree Striker is okay. It's not as good as people would think it is, but it's okay as kind of a pocket shotgun if you're trying to mess around with maybe a sniper or a fusion rifle, something that isn't a shotgun. Sunspots are great too for chaining that damage, chaining those SMG kills, especially for 6s, but it can work in 3s. Going to Hunter, Top Tree Golden Gun is very good. Top Tree Tether is very good for like invis stuff. Top Tree Golden Gun is good because it creates space very well via trip mines and trip mine knives, as well as getting headshot kills gives you faster reload. And in my opinion, the second most important stat to range is reload.
That's interesting. So you feel like reload speed's actually more important even than like stability, for example.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I have also pulled out the sticks a couple times because people always tell me, "Oh, you can't use multi-mock with Iron Reach on controller." That is cap, and it's not real. It's fiction.
Interesting. Yeah, that's funny. I haven't used SMGs a whole lot with controllers. I mostly play mouse and keyboard, of course, but yeah, it's interesting. That was my follow-up question, so you answered that one.
Yeah, I do not think stability is very important. And I would think among the SMG peers, I think a lot of us would agree that stability is it's okay. It's not a bad thing ever per se, but it's not good. You never want to invest into stability in an SMG. Like with the multi-mock, for example, if you can't handle the recoil from Iron Reach, which I would first say just learn it. Give it a couple games, give it a day or two, you'll learn it. Just do kill clip, just so you don't take the stability penalty and you'll be fine. You don't need to spec into Iron Grip, especially since Iron Grip takes away your reload. A lot of stability bonuses in this game come at the cost of something important. Iron Grip at reload, steady rounds at range. Neither of those two are worth it. If you can't handle the Iron Reach, go with the kill clip. Go with things like Hammer Forge as opposed to full bore. You'll see a lot more success rather than investing into stability options.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. What about Warlocks? Where do you feel like they fit with SMGs? Are there particular subclasses you think work better than others?
I don't think Warlock is very good with SMGs. I feel like Hunter movement, additionally with the exotics that you have, things like Graviton Forfeit, since the buff are really good with them, Geminis are really good, Stompies are really good, and Titans just having Peacekeepers kind of give them that leg up on Warlocks, especially since Warlocks classes are really about abilities. They're not really much about gunplay. You kind of need something to buff that up in some way. And so I can't really recommend anything particularly on Warlock. I would say if you are dead set on using an SMG on a Warlock, using like Ophidian aspects on Shadebinder would be the best for the... Essentially, you want to play it like a Behemoth with pushing up to your Glaciers, and then you simulate that handling and reload with Ophidians. But I don't think that Warlock is very good with an SMG in comparison to Hunter and Titan.
What about special weapons? Like I see currently you have double SMG on. Is that something you commonly do in more serious games? You typically run shotgun, sniper. Like where do you think that the different special weapons make sense when you're using an SMG?
I think if you're using an SMG, you're using a shotgun. My main special weapon is Duality because it's broken, but also it's just the pairing between the two. In addition to being extremely strong in the sandbox, is just a no-brainer. The identity of an SMG is supposed to be a primary that you keep on getting kills and kills and kills, and you have out the entire game. And so what really complements it is not a weapon that you hard scope lanes in or you hold lanes for your team like a sniper rifle. It's not a weapon that you have to charge up like a fusion rifle because that takes away time you could have your SMG out, as well as sharing a similar effective range. And it's also not a grenade launcher because you have to wait for the projectile to get there, and then you have to like close the gap with it to get your SMG's effective range. It's super awkward. It can work, but it's awkward. It's a shotgun, which seems kind of counterintuitive, but if you're running the classes I stated earlier, like Top Tree Goldie, you're running Invis build, you're running Behemoth, all of those classes give you either movement tech or abilities that allow you to create space, so you can kind of escape longer range fights or just delete the range entirely. And so having a shotgun just for those moments when an enemy is in your face and you can't spray them down fast enough is a lot more useful, in my opinion, than a weapon that you're really not going to use the entire game except maybe once or twice with how SMGs actually play.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been personally doing a lot of Chaperone SMG lately, which is really, really fun. And then for trials, since I like to snipe, I tend to do like Eye of Soul and SHAYURA'S, or if I had a good multi-mock, I'd probably use that, but I still have yet to get one that I'm really happy with, so I've been using SHAYURA'S instead. But that's interesting hearing you say that. I've kind of figured you would say that because I've seen obviously a bunch of your clips using duality with it. But so talking about Behemoth again for a second, what fragments and aspects do you find to be most useful on? I want to just take a quick detailed look at that just for people who might want to copy your setup.
So Cryoclasm is the bread and butter for me. I know that the rhyme strat is something that's super popular and something that unfortunately I helped create for the community. Definitely kind of wish I could take that back, but I even after I made helped make the rhyme strat videos, I still don't think that really was ever. It was never something I ran personally. Cryoclasm is just my favorite. It's my bread and butter and why I really run this class. Whether it's things like the slide boosting tech, which I can show real quick. If I slide, sprint, and then jump, it does a similar thing to how Apex Legends does a slide boost, which allows you to maintain your momentum, whether it's into a double jump or into a melee, which allows you to close that gap or get out of situations very quickly. So a lot of the times off the start of a round, if I want to get to mid-map very quickly, I guess I'll go from over here. If I want to get to like divider super quickly, I'll charge up my sprint, slide, melee, and then boom. No one else is going to be here as quick, and then I can set up beforehand and pretty much roll them over. And additionally, since they get buffed Cryoclasm, that I can just slide instantly to Shatter Ice. It's essentially a mini Shatter Dive, not quite as good as actual Shatter Dive, but still extremely strong, and you will get a lot of kills with that. Yeah. The second thing I run, or second aspect I run, is Howl of the Storm, and this ability is a little stupid. It's been overtuned for a long time, but it's just an uppercut that has a very big freeze radius, does a lot of damage with its ice, and is just ice in the first place, so you get the benefits of increased grenade cooldown when you break it, you get damage resistance with Whisper of Chains. You have a lot of options with the melee. You can use it as a getaway option, which is extremely strong, or you can use it as a stronger version of normal ice, which is also very strong. And so having that pressure for the enemy team that, oh, is he going to use this as cover? Is he going to use it as aggressive ice? Is he just going to use it for DR? Is he going to melee into a fight? Is he going to melee out? Having those options is very valuable when you have such, I guess, kind of a more two-dimensional playstyle. Essentially, like, the SMG playstyle relies on you just being better than the other team. And so having this melee have so many options creates more depth in a way that it's a little bit less predictable, so it works a lot better against good players. Going into the fragments off of that, Fissures, more ice, go boom, very good. Chains is one of the best, if not the best, stasis fragments because damage resistance is always good, especially when you're using an SMG that kills so fast. Being able to kill so fast and then they kill that much slower, very strong. And then Whisper of Shards to just have my nade up more times so I can deal with long range options more often at regular games.
That's interesting. You sparked a thought that I had. So one of the things you mentioned was that you have, like, that playstyle basically relies on you being better than the other team. I'm curious, what loadouts and different playstyles do you find the most difficult to face when you are using an SMG?
If I'm going against a good team, the most difficult thing is someone having a 120 on their team. Going against 140s is also difficult, but having a 120 on your team just kind of puts an SMG player in the water. Even though it's only like 10 more damage per crit, it matters. And especially not having to land 3 crits and going for the 2 crit 1 body, it hurts a lot. A lot of the strength of an SMG is both the flinch and kind of the chaos it incites and kind of makes you panic. And so a gun that doesn't necessarily care if you're panicky, it has a lower headshot ratio, is very strong, especially with the amount of chip damage that it does. So 120s especially, but hand cannons in general are very hard to duel in the hands of a good player. Long range weapons, not so much.
Yeah, I was going to say, what about stuff like DMT? Does that cause issues for you?
DMT, no. Messenger sometimes, though. The 340 pulse rifles are a lot stronger with this matchup than DMT, just because I can just out TTK DMT. It's not too big of a deal. Whereas Messenger, No Time to Explain, Stars and Shadow, that archetype of pulse have the exact same time to kill as a multi-mock without having the range penalty, which is kind of weird, but it hurts a lot. If someone's a good player with those pulses, it's very hard to duel them because you have to rely on them missing and not just you hitting your shots.
I feel like the 340 pulses, like, I mean, I guess they're more popular now than they were, but I still feel like they're not used as much as you would expect for how they're just so incredibly strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if that will change at some point. Like, I feel like the Destiny meta is always a little, like, lags behind a little bit. For example, SMGs have been strong actually for quite a while, but it's like they're only really getting more popular recently. I guess thanks to SHAYURA'S and Multimock probably for the most part. But it just seems like the meta always kind of like lags behind a little bit, and I'm wondering when that will happen, if ever, with 340 pulses, if all of a sudden they'll become a lot more popular.
Yeah, I do not want to see the day that No Time to Explain is as popular as it should be. That is not going to be fun.
That's what I was thinking of too. So
that gun's scary.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Speaking of pulses, actually, I also wanted to get your take on a couple of the rapid fire pulses, because I know that you were really excited when Darkest Before came back. Where do you feel like that fits into the meta, and where would you use that versus an SMG, for example?
I think currently they kind of just get outclassed by a lot of meta archetypes, but I do view specifically the 17 zoom 540s, so that's like Darkest Before. I think Jurassic Green is also 17 zoom, but I view them as just burst fire SMGs. They play very similarly. They have the same zoom level as competitive SMGs. I think the playstyle that they promote is very similar in terms of very fast pace, constant pressure. And so even though in this meta, I definitely don't really find myself using them outside of quick play, I definitely really enjoy them because of they just play very similarly to an SMG, just different. A little bit slower TTK, a little bit more range, not as accurate with regards to the sprint, the accuracy out of sprint penalty, which is weird, but I think that they get outclassed pretty heavily by hand cannons in this meta, and specifically 340 pulses, I think just do their job a little bit better, but I do really like the archetype, and ideally I would love for them to be a little bit, maybe not themselves being a little bit stronger, but other things being weaker so that they could shine.
Yeah, that's interesting. What would you change if you were in charge of Bungie? CoolCheese is president of Bungie. what would you bring down a little bit to make more room for them?
I feel like 340 pulse rifles shouldn't kill quite as quick as they do. I think it's a little silly that a weapon with 40, maybe even going into 50 meters of range has a 0.67 TTK. Similar issue that I have with DMT, but not within this conversation. I just don't like the idea of having weapons that you can play super far back. There's not very much risk to be extremely rewarding. I think maybe decreasing magazine size on hand cannons for PvP would be something I would like to see. I think that hand cannons are a very Destiny weapon. They're iconic, but I don't like how forgiving they are in terms of you can miss a ton of shots and still land a 3-tap. But let's say instead of on a hand cannon that has 8 in the mag currently, it goes down to 6. So that way you have time for 2 3-taps, but you have to hit all your shots because they are extremely powerful, both in respect to aim assist, but also peak shotting. And so I would love for them to be a little bit less forgiving in terms of missed shots for them to be as good as they are.
That's an interesting take. You know what it reminds me of in a way? I don't know how much you played like early Apex Legends, but the Wingman used to have like a ridiculous amount of bullets. And that was one of the changes that I feel like kind of brought it down in popularity quite a bit over time, is they kept reducing the bullets per magazine. And it's not really something that you see that much in Destiny. I mean, I guess like the 180s have pretty large magazines, but they're not really, at least on PC, they're not quite as popular. The 120s have pretty much the smallest magazines, but you know, obviously they had their time in the sun pretty recently.
Yeah.
So that's kind of be an interesting thing to see if Bungie ever did want to change that.
Yeah, that's something that I would like to see because I like hand cannons a lot. But I think with how well players know the Destiny sandbox and how to exploit it, I think they're definitely a little bit of an outlier with respect to other primary archetypes. But I also don't want to take away from that crisp hand cannon feeling, even if that feeling in and of itself is anti-competitive. I think that's something special that should remain in the game.
Yeah, it's sort of always been like the secret sauce of Destiny. I mean, their gunplay in general has always been amazing, but I feel like people just fell in love with hand cannons like 7 years ago, and anytime you try to take them away, people are not happy. So myself included, like it's just, you know, one of the best feeling parts of Destiny. But I will say I've been having a lot of fun recently trying different things. Like I showed you one of the heroes burden rolls that I realized I had, and it's just been really fun trying that, trying the SHAYURA'S Wrath. Like I like quite a bit from Trials. Someday I'll get a God Roll multi-mock and I can actually enjoy that as well.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I've turned in around like 30,000 Iron Banner tokens,
That's
and I've yet to
insane.
see my 5 out of 5.
Yeah, that's out of any like system rework that I'd like to see in the game. That's one of the ones that I would like to see the most, is just some way to actually get the Iron Banner stuff that I want. It feels so hopeless sometimes to get the things that I'm actually going for.
I hate it so
Yeah.
much.
It's hopefully a quality of life update they'll give us at some point here, maybe in Witch Queen. One other question I had for you, talking about pulse rifles, are there any particular builds that you like to switch to? I mean, obviously you're probably not going to be using your Peacekeepers as much if you're using a pulse rifle. Like what kind of Titan builds do you like to switch to if you're feeling more of a pulse rifle instead of a SMG day?
On pulses, I like the ability to keep pressure on my opponents from a range, and I think the best way to do that is to keep my health up. And so things that give me a damage resistance and or healing are really good. My favorite pick with a pulse is OEM, which I know that helmet has a little bit of a stigma, but it is very strong for the ability to get a kill and then keep pressure on the team as you're getting your health back, and you don't have to have any downtime as long as you keep on killing people. A new exotic that I think I might like a little bit more, but I haven't really tried out with pulses specifically, is CREST of Alpha LUPI. That's my go-to if I'm not using Peacekeepers, because that exotic just in general is nuts. The Titan Wall is... I have a mixed relationship with the Titan Wall in the sense that I don't think it's quite as good as the Rift or Dodge in modes without an objective. And since Destiny does not have any real objectives currently, the Titan Wall kind of just gets left behind. And so giving the Titan Wall an ability to retain its defensive strength, but also gain an offensive bonus is extremely impactful for you and your teammates. Basically, what CREST of Alpha LUPI does that I really like is it heals you and your teammates by 80 health every single time you pop your shield. And so, while 80 might not seem like a lot, when my teammate Drewski gets a kill, SHAYURA'S Wrath is reloading for the kill clip, and I heal him up to 100, like all the way, and he just goes in, he doesn't have to wait for his health to regen, that's a lot stronger than you'd otherwise think. In a similar way, with a pulse rifle, keeping that pressure just by popping a Titan shield that I can both peak shot out of, but it also heals me, is really strong. So that would probably be my go-to, OEM or CREST.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's almost like having Worm Husk, but instead of you dodging and healing yourself, you heal your entire team that's near you. It can definitely be pretty strong. I'm kind of surprised I don't see more people using it. I always thought that was a pretty strong exotic, but it seems like it's been sort of a sleeper pick. Like no one ever really uses it very much, so...
I think it just requires a little bit more thought than the typical Destiny player wants to put into their gameplay. I think a lot of people see things like Dune Marchers, whoa, melee, funny movement exotic, that is very funny, 3 Dunes chains, and they're like, I want to do that. And they don't necessarily think about what CREST of Alpha LUPI not only does for themselves, but also for their team, but they also have to time it correctly, use the correct weapons, they can't just go ape mode, they have to play pretty reserved to get a lot of utility out of it. And I think that's why it's a little bit less used.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about that. In fact, I would say generally speaking in Destiny, the team play focused exotics and things that basically help your entire team, I feel like generally they're kind of underappreciated a little bit, because most players obviously most players are solo players. Like that's just kind of the way it is. But it seems like those team play things are a lot harder for the average player to abuse, because it does require having a team sometimes to like get the maximum benefit out of it. So they don't get used as much, and then a lot of the balancing in this game comes around usage percentages and stuff like that. So it's just kind of interesting. I've always found that to be, I don't know, perplexing, why some of those things don't get used more than I think that they probably weren't being used. Yeah,
and some of those things are even like the strongest things in the game. Like I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden people, like if people cared about playing around their team, if more people had fire teams to actively go in with, I wouldn't be surprised if one day in that world that Crest of Alpha LUPI is the most used Titan exotic, even over broken Dune Marchers right now. I value it more than that. That's why I don't run Dunes. It's odd. And I hope that anyone watching this use Crest. Do it. You'll have fun.
This video single-handedly will get more Crest of Alpha LUPI users out there. It's funny too because Crest, like back I forget, did you play D1 or you started more in D2? Okay, so you remember Crest, like the Alpha LUPI stuff in D1 and Trials is actually like really popular, remember, because of the fast reses and stuff, right? Yeah, they were like meta for Trials for a lot of teams, but it's like they've never really made the comeback in D2 so much. But
which, that being said, the bonus orbs on Crest still super strong. Like I can just get one kill with my smash and boom, there's an orb. I don't even have to thirst the rest of the team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very relaxed.
Well, that's like, I guess the one place I have used it or seen it used is with you know, Titan bubbles and whatnot. But I always felt like that's it's just not like getting the most out of it. I don't know, it's kind of interesting.
For me in scrims, I just use bottom tree striker and then I just treat it like D1 slam. Because in 4v4 scrims, you're not very likely to get a ton of super kills because you're going to get team shot very heavily. So just having the ability to have a shutdown super on his own and just cap it for free, essentially, that's how I've been using my supers, and that's been super strong.
Yeah, that's cool. So I have one other like major line of questioning that I'm curious about. You do a lot of Trials help. That's kind of probably what you're maybe most known for now, I guess, especially playing with like Jake and different people who do a lot of carries and whatnot. And I'm curious, if you are a player who's like trying to help maybe friends who haven't gone flawless before, trying to help them get to the lighthouse, what kind of tips do you have for them to actually like not just play well themselves, but like empower their teammates to play better?
I think if you are going in, I think something that's very important is to have an accurate understanding of your skill level and to build your loadout accordingly. For example, something like an SMG and carrying with an SMG is a very high maintenance build and something that I wouldn't recommend to very many people unless you're extremely confident in your teammate to make up for its weaknesses, which it's why I very often play with snipers, because snipers kind of cover that. They can watch me as I fly in. But also in the same sense that if you are not comfortable with constantly holding W while simultaneously still aiming at them, still making sure you're hitting all your crits, not panicking, then you shouldn't use that. In a similar way, I feel like many players go into the trap of seeing X streamer at the top of the directory with Stompies, T-Steps, Dune Marchers, Hand Cannon, Pellet Shotgun, just default character, and they're like, okay, I should do that because the best person is doing that. But A, you might not be quite good enough to get to that point to use that loadout yet, or B, that might not even be your playstyle. Like, I mean, I'm a good player. I don't use hand cannons. I don't use Dune Marchers. I'm chilling. I use Behemoth, which is apparently a bad class. I don't know who's saying it, but people are. You got to make sure to build into your strengths as a player, but also into what your skill set allows you to use in the moment. Also, how that plays off of your team. So I would definitely go into quick play. Maybe Rumble would be a little bit better. And just play a ton. Use a ton of weapons, use a ton of exotics, a ton of classes, and see what really synergizes with you the most. Say, hey, team, this is what I'm going to rock, and give them some suggestions of things that they could bring to complement that. For example, me, Nomthray, and Pattycakes were running a stacked couple cards the other day. Me and Nomthray were both on SMGs, and Pattycakes was on a Boots of the Assembler Warlock, and he was just buffing both of our SMGs, and we just ran people over. There's nothing they could do. Sure, Cam wasn't getting a ton of kills on the scoreboard, but he was a big part of our success because we had no fear because we had essentially a heavy weapon in our primary slot with that much damage. And so finding those ways to see what you're good at, as well as to tell your teammates to complement that, leads to a lot more success within Trials. That I've found, at least.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about for freelance players? Like, I know this is the first week we've had freelance. I'm sure it will be back at some point, maybe not right away, but would you adjust any of that advice for people who are trying to go flawless freelance instead of, because in that case, you really have no control over who your teammates are, but you can still have some influence over how they play potentially by helping them?
I think in freelance, you want to use anything that rewards you for staying alive. I think for me, the easy answer for freelance is use Teraba. and I just win because that gun is very good. Basically, I just get I don't overextend until I get shot a couple times. I get a couple shots out. I get Ravenous Beast. I win the round. Next round, same thing, over and over and over. Examples of exotics that also do this. No Time to Explain is very good for that same reason. Hawkmoon is great too. Finding exotics, whether it's weapons or armor, that complement you, or I guess maybe not compliment you, but reward you for staying alive, and then just stay alive until you meet that win condition, and then just do it. And that's what I've found. I have not had the greatest experience with freelance teammates, but I don't need teammates when I have Teraba.
Yeah.
So.
When is that thing gonna be meta? That'll be an interesting question. That thing is so it's so powerful, yet it's like, I guess it's a lot of people probably don't have it because it was kind of annoying to get from the raid.
I really don't want that to get a catalyst.
I am terrified. So many people have even asked for like it to not lose progress when you switch weapons and stuff. I'm like,
I don't know about that.
You guys don't realize how oppressive that thing will instantly be. The most annoying thing in the game if it ever truly becomes meta, because it is so powerful. The melt you can do with that is unbelievable.
Just give it a kill track and call it a day. Easy. Everyone wins. Everyone wins.
Yeah.
There we go.
Give it stability or something.
Yeah, give it something useless.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like that's one of those most slept on exotics. That I think it's probably a combination of things where it's like it is annoying to lose like progress when you switch weapons, of course, but I feel like probably usage is not the greatest because just not that many people have it, and it does take investing in it. Like you have to actually keep it out to get the benefits. So
yeah, I feel like it's the biggest issue is that Destiny players love special weapons and can't really do much without special weapons. And so when you give them a primary that rewards you for using their primary, but they can't use their special weapon, they're like, man, this gun's bad, dude. Give me a different gun, even though it's not actually bad. But
right. So here's a question for you. What is the best pairing for Teraba if you're going to use it?
Heritage. Heritage goated.
That makes sense. So you basically go slug shotgun just to cover your very close ranges. If someone pushes you, you don't have the perk going where you can't insta melt them.
Yeah, both because you have the range, but I still feel like people underestimate the body shot damage of slug shotguns in general, not just the exotics. Like they do so much damage with just the body shot that it's a guaranteed kill as long as you hit them. And Heritage specifically, I believe hits 96 handling, which is very good. And then there's a lot of great perks on that gun, so you can kind of tailor it to your playstyle.
Mm-hmm.
You just body shot them or maybe headshot them. It doesn't matter. They're going to die either way. But most of the time, you just have Teraba out the entire game.
Nice. I have to try that more. It's one of those weapons that every time I do like an exotic tier list or something, I use it. I'm like, oh my god, why am I not using this thing all the time? It's so fun. But then I don't know. There's just it's a problem with Destiny. There's too many fun things to use. Like you can't use them all at the same time. You just gotta pick and choose, I guess.
Very true. Huckleberry is bad. Stop lying to yourself. It is not good. Teraba is a better gun in every single way.
Oh yeah, this is actually this is a good thing to talk about real quick. So obviously I would say Multi-Mock's probably considered by most people to be the best SMG. Would you agree with that?
No.
You don't think so?
Number 3.
Really? Okay, so what's the CoolCheese SMG tier list?
SHAYURA'S, Teraba, Multi-Mock, and then Borrowed Time / Extraordinary Rendition. Those are the top 5.
Really?
Those are the only ones I would use right now.
Wait, so you're saying that's your preference of which ones you think are the best, or what do you think most people think are the best?
I think those are the best. That's what I think is the best, yes.
I'm surprised to hear you say that. So you think that SHAYURA'S over Multi-Mock?
Yeah.
Really?
I just think SHAYURA'S is lame though. I don't like the
okay. That's interesting. I was expecting you to say Multi-Mock just because I see you using it so much and you have like 33,000 kills on yours. But that's funny. Okay.
Yeah, I like the playstyle on Multi-Mock the best because it makes you the most mobile. But realistically, in this sandbox, mobility doesn't mean you win. And so having the extra range on SHAYURA'S, it matters a lot more than you think, especially when going back and forth. I don't personally like SHAYURA'S because it has some weird reticle bounce on mouse and keyboard. A lot of controller players like it because the reticle friction makes up for that, but I don't like SHAYURA'S, but I do think it is the best SMG in the game. Teraba, just because it punishes camping by an insta-win button, which everyone everyone camps nowadays. No one wants to actually play the video game, especially, and that gun is just the definition of anti-camp, as well as it still has really good range by default. I think it goes to 20, maybe 21 meters without the perk active, and then you also have Ravenous Beast on top of that. So I think that's a little bit better. I think you could interchange Multimach and Teraba, though, until Teraba gets Catalyst, then yeah. But Multimach is good, but I think the Ravenous Beasts and the range on SHAYURA'S outmatch it.
Interesting. Yeah, the SHAYURA'S, the crazy thing, like the roll I have has, I think it's right around 29 meters before it hits damage drop off, and that's even, it has kill clip too on top of it, and then also killing wind. It's like ridiculous.
The calculator for 600 RPM SMGs is not correct. SHAYURA'S actually has around 28, maybe 28.5 meters at max. It's not actually 29 plus. The last 10 range stat, I believe, on a 600 RPM, SMG has diminishing returns with respect to the rest of SMG range stats.
Interesting.
So that's why, like, it doesn't cut. I'm sure it probably would matter if there was like a 750 that reached 100 range, but we don't have those, or 900s. 600s can, and they do have pretty heavy diminishing returns within the last couple of range stats.
Gotcha. That's interesting to know. What other SMGs, as far as exotics, like what about Risk Runner? Do you think that that thing has merit? Or
no. No. 13 zoom. 13 zoom.
Yeah, that's always been my problem about it too. Like I actually tried to use it a little bit when you know, with the stag meta was formed, where every warlock in the game's camping in a rift with their arc buddies, and so I tried. It just has no range. It's really frustrating to use.
It's like the bullet, the registration falls off before the damage fall off actually happens. It's weird. It's super. It feels very bad to use.
That's what I noticed too. It's like obviously the arc shield thing is cool and the arc conductor is nice, but as far as the gun itself feels, it's just not even close. And then it also doesn't have kill clip or whatever to you know, get the even faster kill. So yeah, what other, you said Huckleberry you're not that into. I'm trying to think what other SMGs there are that
Huckleberry's bad. I said it.
Yeah.
Huckleberry users,
the
Huckleberry
range is
users
awful
are the
on
most,
that thing.
They're the most stubborn group of people I've ever known. They will not accept that they are using a bad gun or a worse version of Teraba in every single way.
That's funny. Yeah, the range on the Huckleberry is so poor. Like when I used that again for my last exotic tier list, I was just blown away by how little range it felt like it had.
It's so bad. It's holy.
That's interesting. Oh, what about any other sleeper ones that you think that are pretty good that people don't use? What about like Extraordinary Rendition?
That one's really good.
You like that one?
Extraordinary is really good. It's not as good as the top three, but it's really good. And then pretty much almost a carbon copy of that gun is Borrowed Time and the energy slot from Gambit. But I cannot recommend farming that out because I've gotten over 100, I think 120 drops of the weapon, and I still haven't gotten a 4 out of 5 with the rangefinder.
Oh my god. I was going to say, if you don't have one yet, then good luck. I will never get one.
It's not worth farming for, but if you do somehow miraculously get one while doing your pinnacles, hang on to it. You're looking for rangefinder with as much range as you can get in barrel, magazine, and master.
Nice.
It's very good.
Yeah. What about any of the Sunset SMGs? Are there ones that you think are still very, very good that people don't use, or ones you wish you had?
I really like the sound effects on the Haka SMGs, so I wish we had an alternative. I'm not sure if I would like actually use them consistently. Like Antiope was a gun that I just thought was super cool, even though I didn't use it a whole ton. But it sounded super cool. It looked super cool. So there's always a soft spot in my heart with that gun. I also took that to LAN, so I guess there's that as well.
Oh yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, there's a LAN tournament in Las Vegas that I brought Antiope and Sunshot. So I have a soft place for those two weapons, but with regards to SMGs as a whole, I think just the 900 adaptives never really had the chance in the sun. Also, I think Chris Proctor said that they are not coming back in an interview on firing range, or not firing range, on a Massive Breakdown.
Yeah, wow.
So that is sad. I like Suros SMGs a lot.
I was gonna say I've always really liked this
good
too. They have a very fast body shot time to kill. They're very forgiving to use.
Yeah, those are the only archetype of SMG that I'd be worried about actually breaking the game. I think the current SMGs are pretty well balanced with regards to other meta primaries. They're
Yeah.
strong, but they require a little bit. You have to invest in the playstyle, and they're a little bit risky, which I think is good. Having risky weapons be strong is always a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've always liked that philosophy. It's like if something is really strong, it should also be either hard to use or high risk, where it's not free to use. I think that's where you get into trouble, is when you have very powerful things that are either very forgiving or there's no danger in using them. You can use it for free from great distance.
DMT what?
Yeah, exactly. Well, DMT is like the perfect example of that, where it's like you can run around hip firing like a 150 hand cannon, but dealing the damage of a 120, and you can do it from essentially across the entire map. Like there's just no downside to it. It's all upside.
Yep.
Nice. Well, thank you for your time with us. It was really fun chatting with you. I knew that'd be an awesome time. I love talking about guns that I don't use that much, like SMGs. I'm kind of getting into them more, but that was really fun. Anything you want to talk about? Like, I know your YouTube channel has been popping off lately. Any big projects you have coming up or things you want people to know about?
I'm definitely trying to make some more content around alternative builds for like Hunter and Warlock with regards to SMGs. Since I've been playing a lot of Titan the past couple of seasons, trying to push the boundaries of what works on those other classes with regards to SMGs. So definitely going to be doing some stuff with that. Also, I hope to play a lot of Halo on Twitch or maybe YouTube. So if you're interested in Halo Infinite, maybe my SMG skills will transfer to that. So maybe I'll be nuts.
That's really cool. That's one of the things I've always enjoyed about playing like Apex, for example, is like I feel like my improvements in tracking aim in Apex translate to SMGs really well in Destiny. Like just there's a very good feeling between the two.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun in the Halo test flights, so I'm really looking forward to that release.
Yeah, me too. That's
awesome.
Awesome. Well, I'll link all your socials in the description. But thank you again for spending some time with us.
GG's, well played.